10 o'clock, Your Worship.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'll bring this special council meeting to order Thursday, April the 7th at 10 a.m. and to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Stahelis. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 2. Do you have any late items?
Have no late items. Thank you. Next order.
Thank you. Can I have approval of the agenda then, please?
Moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Piper. Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Anybody opposed? No. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We don't have any delegations this morning, so we'll move right on to number 5, reports from staff. We have a report from the operations manager regarding disposition of municipal building tourist information center.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the April 4th, 2022 council meeting, the council was presented a report requesting permission to demolish the existing tourist information center located at 449 Hot Springs Road. Staff recommended demolition of the building, which does not carry any heritage status and would require significant renovations to meet current building code standards if it were to be relocated and repurposed for another use. Council referred the matter back to staff with request for more information. The disposition options, option 1 would be to demolish existing building. The cost is Tourism Harrison River Valley has indicated that the demolition cost would be included in their project costs, provided that there were no unknown factors that would exceed their $30,000 allocated budget. The procedure moving forward would council authorize the demolition of the building, and tourism contractor applies for the FVRD demolition permit to demolish and remove the building. Timeline is estimated to be 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the permit or when permits are issued. The motion required for option 1 would read that the current tourist information building located at 449 Hot Springs Road be demolished. Option 2 would the village moves the building to the predetermined temporary location to facilitate the sale of the building to a third party. Cost: the village would be responsible to cover permitting and moving costs to be funded from surplus. Estimated costs for the options are below within your report. Since this was prepared, there was a modified fee schedule from the FVRD, which added another $150 to that fee structure. And then also, as I was pulling into the parking lot, I did speak with a moving company that provided some more information regarding moving the building. So our estimate was a little bit high. It was estimated originally at $50,000. He estimated it at between $36,000 and $40,000. So the total budget for the moving is going to be reduced to $43,400. And again, this is an estimate, $43,480. Now, something that wasn't considered at the time and brought forward by the moving company is that depending where the final resting place for the building is, additional costs may be incurred if power lines or tel lines need to be lifted in order to move the building under, and that is quite costly. I don't have an exact number for that, but if that was that would be added to the $43,000 budget that I mentioned. The procedure, once authorized by council, village staff will obtain the required permits and engage a moving company to relocate the building. Timeline is 4 to 8 weeks to complete the relocation process, plus an additional 4 weeks to advertise and receive bids. Once awarded, the purchaser would be required to obtain the necessary permits to move the building to a new location, a process that could take an additional 4 to 8 weeks. This process, if successful, would take 4 to 5 months to complete. Motion required for option 2 would read, there would be two motions, that the old tourist information building located at 499 Hot Springs Road be moved to a temporary location as a cost of up to, we'll say $45,000 to be funded from general surplus, and that the old tourism information center building be advertised for sale to the highest bidder subject to the provisions of Section 26 of the Community Charter on the conditions that it be moved within 60 days of purchase. The recommendation for council this morning is that the disposition of municipal building tourist information center report be received for information.
So we have a motion here for receipt for information, and we'll have discussion. Do we have a move and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, good morning all. Unfortunately, neither of these options work for me for a number of reasons, but there is another solution. I mean, this to me is a nightmare for council because although we get immunity for making poor or bad decisions, it will not be covered under the disposal of council property. And therefore, unless all the I's are dotted, T's are crosses, and that we could find ourselves, if it's challenged and the challenge is successful, on actually being financially viable for it. Now, the cost of, demolishing a building. If Tourism Harrison hadn't got their grant, they would still be in there for the next 5, 10, 15, possibly 20 years. So the building has got a use. Not long ago did we put a new roof on that building, but to demolish something like that just isn't in my taking. To move it, I mean, we're never going to get anyone that's going to want to move it again, pay out 45,000 plus purchase it off of us. So why don't we we got the land behind the village office is designated as P1. That could be used for the new Tourism Harrison building to be put on. That way we save, there's no demolition. We haven't got to move the Brickco temporary building or anything for us. It all stays as it is. They've got plenty of parking at the rear of it. They can use the overflow car park for parking, which will take all the traffic away from the school area as well. They won't say any extra cost in doing that for landfill or for connecting utilities can be paid for, but they're not paying out $30,000 for demolition. So I think that needs to be looked at, but the other two options really are not viable. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment in regards to using the vacant land. As the councillor knows, that was put aside till after the OCP, that vacant land, because councillors were of the opinion that at some point that could be used for a multi-use, either for seniors or for renting at some point. So that's hang on, councillor, if I may finish speaking. That whole point was put aside by council, so that land can't be used till after the OCP. That was part of council's wish, so that can't be used for that. Now, obviously, there's reasons from Tourism Harrison why they want to keep the existing site, because there's no cost for hookups, number one, which is expensive. Water, sewer, and also for power. Before I go any further, CAO, before I give it to another councillor first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I just wanted to offer clarification on the technical concern that Councillor Hooper raised about the disposition of public assets. We did receive a legal opinion some time back about whether or not demolition fell under the part of the act that guides disposition, and it does not. So in the event that a village asset is put for sale, there are advertising requirements within the act that we have to follow. There's timelines around those, and we've gone through this process many times. But with respect to demolition, I want to assure council that they wouldn't be incurring any legal risk by making that decision.
Thank you. The other councillors for the first time, please. To speak. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, just a question. If council decides to go with option number 2, which is moving the building and then sell it, does that go to an auction type procedure with successful bidder is the highest bidder? Thank you.
McDonald.
Certainly, council has options on how to dispose of surplus property. That would be the most common one, wherein it would be publicly advertised in accordance. There's advertising requirements within the Act. Council also has the legal ability to sell any particular asset to a particular party, like direct award a contract, but the same advertising provisions apply. If it was their intention to do so, they would go through the same advertising process stating their intent, so that there was public notification of such an arrangement.
All right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Palmer.
Just to repeat a question that I had emailed yesterday, and I think my question was, with the $30,000 it's in the budget for Tourism Harrison, would that be available for the use for the removal of it if we went with the second option or some form of the second option? And I understood the answer to that is yes, but just for
clarification. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I find this difficult. Usually I come to meetings with an idea of what I want to do. And this one, I haven't been able to do so because there's still some issues that I don't fully have a good grip on. I do understand from the report that came to our Monday night council that there are some rodent issues, there's some lead paint issues, there's some light bulb issues, and there's probably not asbestos issues, but there could be. There was nothing in the report indicating any structural issues, so I'm going to assume that there's no structural problems with the building. So I have to make some assumptions on those things. I look at it and I know I find a little degree of frustration, although I'm not frustrated with anyone, don't misunderstand me. But, you know, this showed up to us last Friday or Thursday, and we're having to make such a fast decision. Although the grant application probably went in months and months and months ago, the approval of the grant, as far as I can see, was first announced in the public to February 4th. And so a really important part of it is now, and I think it's really important, and we're kind of in a position where we have to make a fast decision on it. And yet anybody, even when the grant went in, there must have been an understanding that it was based on demolishing or moving a building. It seems to me that, that demolishing the building may in fact be a good thing to do. It also seems to me that moving the building and selling it might be an okay thing to do. It also seems to me that finding another municipal use for the building on another piece of property might also be a good idea. You know, maybe it would be a good senior center. I have no idea how much money would be required to hook it up and repurpose it. But you know, of late, we have spent a bit of money on facilities. So I certainly wouldn't rule that out. I just, all of those things I don't know enough about. So I find I'm looking at a very important decision and not really knowing that. And if a person could do some long-term planning, it may well have been that this building is an answer to a question that, you know, on a broader issue than just do we demolish it or not. I'm not impressed. I'm not worried about the historic nature of the building. I have to say, I know many people are calling it historic. It's old. Just think because things are old, they're not historic. I'm old. I'm far from historic. So that in itself doesn't seem to be quite so important to me, although I understand it is important to others, but that it is a building that may have some use for the village for some other purpose that we haven't had a chance to look at is what concerns me. So at this stage, you know, I do look at it, and of course I'm always a fan, if I don't know what I want to do, is to put the decision off. And I know there's no more time part of me is leaning to moving the building, as particularly if the $30,000 demolition can be included, so that if it looks like a net cost to the village to move it is 16,000, subject to all sorts of issues. I know that. And then I'm not sure that I want to sell it. It may well be it would be an idea to look at, see if it would suit any other municipal purpose. And then what the cost of doing that. And then, I mean, once it's off the property, it's no longer holding back the redevelopment of the tourism center. So maybe, we don't want to have it sit there for a long time, but maybe we could have the opportunity to actually look at what possible uses there would be for the village. And if not, of course, we could put it up for sale. But so those are the sort of issues that I see, and I have a bit of a challenge with making a decision today when I just view that we haven't had a chance to look at it that well in terms of broader planning. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to express that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the reason for having the meeting today, Councillor, was it came from council on Monday.
Yeah.
That we should have an emergency meeting regarding the building. So that was a request by council from looking at it from different points of view, whether it's worth retaining it, selling it, or demolishing it. So this is where we are this morning on that point there. Councillor, do you have any comments? Can she hear me? Councillor Piper, can you hear me?
Thank you.
You're breaking up,
Commissioner.
Councillor.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can, yep.
Yeah.
My apologies, I was not physically able to attend Monday's meeting. My stomach flu with Nana, so I was in no condition to attend. So I do apologize. The meeting wasn't posted, so I wasn't able to hear. Oh,
Breaking up, Councillor.
value and history of this build, making it significant of it being notably 70 years old. What building? And I'm not sure if that's a better suited question for yourself, Your Worship, or
You're breaking up, unfortunately, Councillor. We're not getting all your comments coming through.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Councillor Piper, can you try and turn your camera off and try speaking again?
and to if you like. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm just that building is. Those 70 years ago.
Excuse me,
However
Councillor
long-
Piper. Excuse me, Councillor Piper. You're
Yes?
still cutting out. Could you try calling in?
I will.
Councillor Piper?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Excellent. A bit of a process, sorry. My question was, what is the history and the sentimentalness of this building? How did the village come in to acquire the building? So I don't know if that's a best question for the mayor, or if that should go through yourself to staff.
I do know the answer, but I'll give it to our corporate officer.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Piper. In the last report, the building was acquired through donation from the Resort Hotel. And I believe that, Tyson, correct me if I'm wrong, 1949. And it was used at that time as the village office. And then when the current village office was donated to the village, they moved into what's now the current office, and the visitor center was run by the Chamber of Commerce or Bureau at that time, and continued to do so to this day.
Excellent, thank you. And I apologize. I'm sure that you all discussed that on Monday when I was unable to attend Monday's meeting. For me, it comes down to another example of what we should have been doing all along, actually. If we're going to be looking at some buildings in our village that, and landscapes or areas, anything like that, that should be deemed with heritage exclusivity. Honestly, I think there should be a mayor's committee called with, you know, a historical sustainability committee or something along those lines. So we're not up against a decision like this where you can't win, you can't lose for whichever decision is made at the table today. So, I mean, I'm not, and I've voiced before, I'm not a fan of knee-jerk type of things that come up, but here we are. I mean, it's a 70-year-old building. The report on Monday listed numerous things that are of concern. And are we prepared to spend tax dollars to have a building on blocks boarded up, which is infested with, you know, I'm not sure what kind of animals and whatnot, and have that sit on display for several months until a process goes through. So I'm wrestling with that, but that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Back to Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see the new tourism building built. But do we know what the asset cost of the building is at the moment to us? Has it got a dollar value on it?
Ms. McDonald, that'll be for
Did you want to answer that, Scott, or
Yes,
do you want me to speak to it? You go ahead.
the financial manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hooper. In our books right now, the value of the asset is $0.
It's right. So if for some reason now that we can't actually move on and Tourism Harrison lose their grant, the building will be demolished anyway. Yes, no?
Your Worship, I don't understand the question.
The question is that it's got no value to us at all, no financial value. We've got here that we would sell it to somebody else. It's got no financial value. Why are we selling it? Also, if this process takes so long that Tourism Harrison or Harrison River Valley Tourism lose their grant, what will we do with the building? We've been told it's uninhabitable, it's got lead paint, it's got this. Are we going to throw Tourism Harrison out of the building? Or are we going to move on and just find another location for Tourism Harrison? I know there's all this about the OCP and putting it behind the village office, but that would be the ideal space. The $30,000 they would save on demolition would more than that cover the cost of connecting up utilities and any landfill they need. Also, if the village does eventually get the culture hub, it would fit in nicely behind that. We're taking traffic away from the school area and that. I just can't understand why we just can't look at another place to actually put the new tourism building. We then keep all our assets. We haven't got to start moving things about like the Brickco thing, the Brickco building. We can make use of that. We can have it over time. It can be renovated. We can use it as either as emergency accommodation or as cold weather or inclement weather shelter. At the moment, these two options don't seem to work for anybody. So we need a third option. And if we're going to say that we can't look at asking Tourism Harrison to re-site behind the village office, they're going to lose their grant. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the word non-habitable was used about the building. I believe what was put on the report was what the building was made up of inside, and there's possible rodent infestation there, but the word that couldn't be used was not mentioned, I don't believe. Again, I'll bring back the question that council directed by resolution to leave that piece of land behind the village office till after the OCP was completed. Again, I'm not sure whether 30,000 would cover the cost of all hookups. I don't think it would. Plus sewer and water, I think it would come to a lot more than 30,000 to do that alone, plus all the social media stuff that would have to go into the building. Regarding putting the building for use, it would, if that was used by the village for use, I'm anticipating it would have to be built above the floodplain, number one, if it was moved for habitable use. So that's another cost that would be incurred. If it had, then it has to be totally renovated. That's another, and you know what happens when you renovate something? It costs a fortune. So it's a lot of good answers. Thank you to all of council for all your thoughts on this. Obviously, you really thought about it, and that's why we're here this morning. The building for the, I don't think it would be feasible to use that building. The thing what we have to get away from here in this area where we are, where the village office is, we don't want to turn it into what's happened to many schools in the province where they all end up with portables all over the place. You know, we had an opportunity to build a civic center there. It was turned down, unfortunately. So the land was left alone for a while till the OCP is completed. So I think the whole idea is to have it's a good central area to build a center for the community where everything could be there as well. So, I mean, I don't know, the options here to me, I mean, if the building was put up for sale, I think the cost that the taxpayers would have to put in this from surplus over and above what Tourism Harrison has offered. I mean, that should be put on, I don't know if this is how you can do it, should be put on as part of the bidding war. When they say if it's 20,000 or 15,000, that's where you start. And then the cost to the person of moving that from the location, if it's temporarily put on the vacant land, to move it as well to wherever they want to move it to. So it's, you know, it's a difficult situation for everybody. It's like Corporate officer said it was a building donated to the village with the land, I believe, this history tells me, for $9,000 back in the day. And it served its purpose. Now Tourism Harrison have been very fortunate to get a grant, very fortunate to build a whole new building. I don't know, I'm going to put it out to councillors for more discussion. Who wants to have another go at this? Councillor Vidal?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. I understand Councillor Hooper's concerns regarding parking. And with that, I'm going to put a question to staff. I don't have the copy of the report that tourism did submit to council. Does staff remember if there was accommodation for some parking with the new building?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was actually, that's a very good point. The new latest iteration of the building layout actually removes the parking from Walnut and puts it into a parking lot in behind the building. And it gives it one point of access, which actually is going to be a safer because of the school across the street. Because right now we have a lot of vehicles backing in and out, coming off of the highway. So the latest layout is the most safest and best design.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. And I agree with Mayor Facio's comments that should council decide to move the building and sell it, then if sort of like part of the bidding process did include a cost recovery for whatever the amount is, as Councillor Palmer indicated, possibly around $16,000 from surplus. Still, as I discussed on Monday night's council meeting, I do think that building, although maybe not a heritage building, does have some historical value. And certainly we've heard from some of our residents of their desire to save it and keep it. I'm not sure that repurposing it for something as a senior center or whatever is the proper way to go, given the considerable, I think, the considerable amount of money that the village would have to put forward for renovations. So having said that, Your Worship, I would like to see the building temporarily moved and it go up for sale. Thank you.
Councillor, any further discussions from the other councillors? Councillor Palmer and Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the options before us, and there are, obviously we're not bound to this, just these two. And I understand this is helpful from staff to put at least give us a couple of options. But the option A, with regard to that the current tourism information center located at 499 Hot Springs Road be demolished. It would seem to me that even if we decided to demolish it, I wouldn't be happy with that motion, because I don't know that we're demolishing it. I would rather have the motion that we allow Tourism Harrison to demolish it. What I've heard a couple of times is they've got $30,000 and they would use the $30,000 for demolition, and that above $30,000, I'm getting the idea, would be our cost. And I would think it shouldn't be. I would think if they're going ahead with the project, they need to find that money in their budget somehow. So I wouldn't want to have it demolished and then being told that it costs $43,000 and the village is paying $13,000, because That would be, I mean, if the idea we're doing this and we're saying, well, let's knock away the building, but we're not going to bear any taxpayer costs, that's the benefit, then I wouldn't want to see it come back. So I would want the motion to reflect that. If that's the route we go, that we simply allow them to demolish it, and that there's an extra overrun of costs. I think that's going to be their problem, since we're not the ones hoping to demolish it. And then the second one, again, if we were to go ahead with that, I wouldn't personally want to see us go ahead with the second part of it. I'm not sure that I would want to list it for sale until we took a look at whether or not we could use it. And that I would want the first part to indicate if it's 45,000, that the 30,000 would come from Tourism Harrison. So I would want it that way. I recognize that it may well be that the absolute best thing we can do is just demolish it. That may in fact be the best solution. I just don't feel that we've had an opportunity to look at all of the different options. And I know that we came to us Monday and we said, let's do it again. And I'm fully supportive of today's meeting. When I said earlier about having to make a fast decision, I was simply indicating I know we need to make a fast decision, but I think that the ability to have a broader scope of the issues, it's something we should have been looking at over the last several months. I don't really have a better sense of, I know that there is an historical claim. I respect that. I know that it is space that could be used. I'm just not sure if it can be used effectively or efficiently, if we can move it to land that we own. There's all of those sort of questions that could have easily been dealt with over a 6 or 9 month period, or even a 3 or 4 month period to some extent, but it's difficult to do. So there's so many things that I don't do, that I don't know, I should say, that I'm inclined to just do a temporary move on it, and then see, at worst, we dispose of it and have a small loss. But I do recognize that it may in fact be the best decision to demolish it. I'm just not personally prepared to go there at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, with demolishing the building, it's not up to Tourism Harrison when they demolish it. It's up to us because it's our property. So we have to decide on that. As I said, I'm not in favour of either of these options. To actually move the building, if it's going to be moved, it has to be moved, if we're keeping it, to a permanent position. Otherwise, it's going to be moved again and again and again. As I say, the only option I see available to get out of this mess is to find Tourism Harrison another place to put their museum. And if it means going back to council and rescinding our things to put this bit of land towards the OCP, then we need to do it, because we're getting nowhere with this. We're going to go backwards and forwards until the timescale runs out for Tourism Harrison. And I would hate to see that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. First of all, this is not a mess, councillor. This is something that came to council after the, not too long ago, from Tourism Harrison, they received the grant. Prior to that, we didn't know what was going on. So we didn't have months and months to make any decisions on this. There's no mess at all here. The staff brought forward the recommendation of the Monday night's council meeting, and council's wish was to have a special meeting today, which we are having to discuss it. This is nothing unusual, hasn't happened before, happens in many communities to have emergency meetings to deal with certain situations within the community. The land behind the village office, as you quite rightly said, is not zoned for putting up residential or commercial at the moment, because the village sent it back to the OCP before that's done, because council previously were discussing putting units there for the senior housing or affordable housing, and also hopefully for rental as well, because of the rental shortage in the community. But council's wishes was, no, we're not going to rezone it at the moment. We're going to send it back to the OCP till people have had their say and what they want to see happening on that parcel of property. So that is not, I don't think, on the cards at the moment, to be perfectly honest. The situation with the building and how it can be used, well, I don't know. The CEO has her light on, I'll give it to her in a minute, is something that I don't know whether it can be used, how much money would have to be spent to renovate it, to make it feasible, either for an office or for anything else. Again, a location has to be found. We have to go through different processes to deal with this. It's not as simple just signing on the dotted line. Council is doing their due diligence here this morning, and the CEO, you have a comment.
Yes, just to fill in a little bit more information. I should point out that if council wanted to align with Councillor Hooper's idea to revisit the tourism center project, that would have to go back to council for reconsideration because council supported the project in the location that it's at. So that's not on today's agenda, and that would require additional action by council. That's not up for discussion at this meeting. So just to remind council that they supported the project in the location that it's at, which does require the removal of the existing building. And it just may be helpful for council to know that from the staff point of view, we have no use for that building. We're very familiar with the building. We have not asked you to retain it so that we can repurpose it in any way, although we did ask you for permission to accept the Britco portable, because we do have a functional use for that within the organization. So this wasn't overlooked from a staff point of view. It's just that we recognize from our point of view that this building has no useful purpose within our organization. With respect to its value as an asset for sale, I can't speak to that. Only the market can speak to that. And finally, I do want to remind council that we do not have a budget line item for a senior center. There's no society within the community here that's approached us asking to take possession of the building for that purpose. We have recently adopted a 5-year financial plan that doesn't contemplate those sort of expenses. So those are just the little bits of information I wanted to fill in at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Piper, you have any comments?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've listened to everybody, but when I make decisions at the table, I rely on the good works of our very talented staff. They have 2 options in front of us, and thank you to the CAO for bringing up our previous approval. I can strike that from my notes. So really, for my decision today, there's 2 options, and I'm going to chalk it up to a lessons learned. If we as a community wish to move forward and, hold up those buildings or locations, landscaping, etc., that hold a heritage or historical value to our community, then we need to start processes, establish policies that when similar situations arise, there is processes and a procedure in place for us to move forward. So today, I'm taking that as a lesson learned, and I will disappoint some of our residents, but I am going to support option 1. We've heard there is 0 financial value in the building. We have heard from staff that there is no need for the building for municipal purposes. So I'm going to close and say I'm supporting option 1, that we demolish the building and let the process move forward, and applaud a brand new structure with exceptional relocation of parking that will assist over with the school chaos in the morning and afternoon that happens over on Walnut, and take the lumps as they may come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, to start for you. You said there's going to be parking access at the rear of the building. Is that in our yard or are we talking about the overflow car park?
No, it's actually, it'd be between the existing Public Works building and the new information center.
So basically it'd be in the same position it is now virtually, parking.
No, so there will be one point of access behind the building off of Walnut, and then there will be parking adjacent we'll call it the east side of the new building, in between the new building and the
workshop.
existing. Yes, that's correct.
Right. On that, will the access be able to take the motorhomes that come in and pull up?
No, it wouldn't be large enough. It would be
So
only for for domestic vehicles.
So the amount of motorhomes and that turn up at the centre at the moment is quite challenging from just to park in that area. So there's going to be no parking for the motorhomes or anything. The other point is it in our budget to move the Brickco portable, or is it staying in the same position?
I can't speak to the budget, but it would be relocated. It would be at minimal cost what I envision is it just gets moved back towards the village office and occupy the area between the existing parking lot and we'll call it the large pine tree.
Yeah, because we'd have to connect electric up to it and the rest of it. So there's an additional cost for that. Also, the area behind the village office, I remember back in 2019, that we rezoned 6 of them plots for commercial residential.
Ms.
Am I
McDonald?
not correct? Because I think I was the only person that voted against it.
That bylaw, the rezoning bylaw was not adopted in the end. So that,
Adopted. Oh.
Yeah.
So really, then all that land behind the village office is still P1. Thank you.
that's correct.
Councillor Palmer.
Just wanted to go to a point that's probably relatively minor. I've heard the building referred to having no value, and maybe it has no value, but I don't think you can take that from the financial statement from the village. I mean, I know from being involved in nonprofits that, you know, the value of a building that's carried forward is its acquisition and improvement cost over the years. So using the same logic, I bet McPherson House has no, or the house where our council is, has no value as well. But I'm sure we would all assign a significant value to it in terms of its usefulness for the village. Or if it has a value, it would be minimal. So I don't know that book value of buildings of municipalities and nonprofits is meaningful. I guess the value of the building is quite simply what the market would pay for it. And that's, as the CIAO wisely said, that is a market issue, and it's very hard to predict what value, if any, the building has. And that is a bit of a significant gray area at this stage in terms of knowledge. Anyway, I just wanted to raise that about the value, because I've heard the value referred to a few times, and I'm thinking that's, you know, it is not a significant issue in my mind. Thank you.
I think we have to get away from this word heritage. I think when the Communities in Bloom did their last trip around the village, I forget how many years ago now, but I think the only building they recognized as old, and I don't know whether the plaque says heritage, is the Elliott Building, where the first doctor in Harrison used to carry out his business here as a doctor. But that's where the Glencoe Hotel is now. There is a plaque on there, which so they did quite a tour of the village in regards to if there is any heritage buildings in the village. I mean, from my I don't know what the Of course, Canada is a young country compared to Europe in respect to what is heritage. I mean, to me, heritage is something that has to be at least over anything between 100 and 200 years old before it's considered a heritage building, you know, but that depends on the individuals. Regarding the land, as you already heard, it's like I said originally, it's not zoned at the moment. Nothing we can do about that till we decide what to do with that land. Any other questions? Councillor Viley, anybody wants the last one before I go on the options? I've got your hand already, Councillor Hooper. I've got
I have
Councillor
nothing.
Viley, Councillor Piper, then Councillor Hooper.
I have nothing further, Your Worship, other than I will be voting for option number 2. Thank you.
Councillor Piper.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Just to go back to Councillor Hooper's point about the RVs and motorhomes parking, I believe it was in a committee meeting I was in, and the question was raised around the new building and the new parking area. And the new parking area, by the design that I saw, looked like a great improvement. Back to the motorhomes and RVs, they said that those visitors that attend using those type of vehicles are usually during the summer months, and typically when outside of those months, they do use that pocket parking, which is in front of the Village Hall on Hot Springs Road, or park on Walnut itself. So I think in tourism's planning, they did think about that. So I just wanted to kind of drop that nugget and not leave any questions for anybody that wasn't considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I mean, if this council decides to vote on option 2, removing it, the building, I feel that cost has to be covered by Tourism Harrison, because it is our building. They lease the land off of us and nothing else. And if they want to get rid of the building, it's up to us to decide how they do it. And if it's going to be option 2, then the whole cost should be associated to Tourism Harrison and not to the residents of the village. Thank you.
Councillor, no comments from staff on that? No other comments before I? Okay. So on the motion, one of the current tourist information center building located on Hot Springs Road, excuse me, be demolished. We need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Piper. I will second it for discussion. Discussion? No discussion. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of option 1? Councillor Piper. Opposed? Motion fails. Option 2. Now, regarding, just for need some clarification here from staff regarding the comments from Councillor Palmer, Councillor Hooper, in regards to the if there is any excess required on the moving to be covered by tourism, not by the village.
Your worship, I can speak to that, but I can't offer assurances on that regard. I think council received an email from me yesterday wherein I communicated that I had a conversation with Robert Reyes, who's the Executive Director of Tourism Harrison River Valley. And he took that question under consideration as to whether or not the $30,000 line item in their budget that's been approved by funding authorities could go towards the cost of relocating the building. And he didn't see a problem with that, providing that the funding authorities didn't see a problem with that. He didn't anticipate that. But in excess of that, there's nothing in that project budget to support that.
Thank you. We should bear in mind that we are receiving the portable for free, is it? Yeah, we are receiving the portable, which isn't that old. So it's quite a new unit from tourism. So you should bear that in mind. Also, my question to staff regarding if it's going out to bids, can we have a what's the word? There's a word when you have an auction, you have a bidding price.
Reserve price.
Upset price, yes.
That would be a process that would follow along after the moving of the building. So we're looking at relocating the building.
First, okay.
Yeah, that would be, the permits would have to be sought in the name of the village, as Councillor Hooper correctly points out. This is our building, so whether we move it or demolish it or anything else, any of the permits would be in our name. So we would require a building permit to relocate it. That would be in our name. And together with tourism, we would seek quotes on that process by qualified contractors.
Okay, I'm just trying to, hopefully if we can do it that way, that would try and save any cost to the taxpayers that may come out of this whole situation.
I think there will be costs involved.
Yeah.
I think that the report clearly indicates that.
Okay, so on now, on option 2, where are we? That the old tourist information center building located 409 Hot Springs Road be moved to a temporary location at a cost of up to approximately now to $45,000 to be funded from general surplus, and that the old tourist information center building be advertised for sale to the highest bidder, subject to provisions of section 26 of the community charter, on the condition that it be moved within 60 days of the purchase. Do we have a move and a seconder for that?
So
Moved by
moved.
Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Hooper. Any discussion on this? Councillor Palmer?
I want to move an amendment. I would like to move an amendment. My amendment would be the first part, that it would be $45,000 to be funded, $30,000 from Tourism Harrison, and the balance from general surplus, period. And then I would wish to delete the second paragraph. We have ample time to discuss the process of the second paragraph in terms of sale or use of the building. But the first part is the one that's time sensitive in terms of being able to vacate that spot. So that would be I want to move that amendment.
So what do you want? The main
I wanted
motion
to, the old tourist information center located at 499 from the temporary at a cost of up to $45,000 to be funded, $30,000 from Tourism Harrison and the balance from general surplus, period.
Okay,
So Councillor Palmer is putting that amending motion forward, so he would like a seconder.
do we have a seconder for the amended motion? Seconded by Councillor Hooper. Discussion on the amended motion. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I mean, this land is P1, and as I take it, the Tourism Harrison, or whatever you call it now, they actually sell items within it, like little Sasquatch and the rest of it. So do they need a business permit, or do we need to rezone this piece of land for this reason?
I think so. Well, I'll let staff answer that.
No, there's no concern there. The use is not changing.
Right, so I feel that because tourist house and technically we've got, we don't pay them anything, they don't pay us nothing. They're totally separate from the village, correct? So therefore, they should pay for the entire cost of moving the building if it's, if that's what we vote for. As they're a business, we can't be seen to be helping a business actually carry out renovations or that. So, no, I'd like to put a motion on the table that should option 2 be,
Option 1 first to deal with.
Yes, your worship, we have an amending motion from Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Hooper, that would read that the old Tourism Information Center building located at 499 Hot Springs Road be moved to a temporary location at a cost of up to $45,000 to be funded $30,000 from Tourism Harrison River Valley's project cost and the balance from surplus. And that the second part of that motion be deleted. So that's what needs to be voted on before it get amended again.
yeah, so can I just say then that if they're going to fund it up to 30,000 so they can put their own building on it, why are we helping them out as a business by funding the rest of the money?
Excuse me, sir, they are not a business. They're a registered non-profit society. Never have been a business.
But they sell goods in there, yes?
That doesn't make that, well, so does the museum. So does the museum. Legacy.
But they're not
So does
just,
tourist,
I mean,
so does the Festival of the Arts.
if they need extra funding, they've now got other members of theirs like Agassiz, Rosedale, Chehalis, the rest of it, that they all are now getting funding from through the room tax and the rest of it. So I don't see why the village residents should actually be on the hook for any extra cost on moving this building. Thank you.
Your
So
worship,
so are you taking away your seconding the motion in favor of Councillor? So I need a seconder for Councillor Palmer's motion. Do we have a seconder? I will second it for discussion. Any further discussion on Councillor Palmer's amendment? That yes, Councillor Piper.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Thank you.
Thanks. Just a point of clarification on Councillor Palmer's amendment. I'm curious about the intent of removing the number or the second portion of that motion. Is it the 60 days that's creating concern, or what's the intent behind that, please? Thank you.
Councillor Palmer, do you have any answers to Councillor Piper's comments there?
Yes, that's a good question. I view that right now we're trying to deal with a time frame so that we don't delay the construction of the new building. So I see moving the unit as very time sensitive. The actual advertising it for sale, if we were to revisit this in our next council meeting or the one after that, I don't see that as having the same time sensitivity. I would, if we, I understand there's no plan to use it for municipal purposes. I'd like to at least maybe look at whether there's a purpose to that. I think it probably will need to be sold to a third party, but I'd like to at least, once we take the time pressure off the building, once it's moved, to be able to look at whether there's another possible purpose to it. So that's all the reason that I was taking the second paragraph off, thinking that that could be dealt with in a subsequent council meeting, and maybe at the same time as looking at whether it could be a senior center. And I know all the reasons that it probably shouldn't be, but I was trying to allow that to be a future decision. That was my purpose. Thank you.
Does that help, Councillor Piper?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted some clear understanding of the motive behind that. So thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Does Harrison Valley River, whatever it is, tourism, do they lease the land off of us? If so, what is the length for the lease? Thank you.
Any comments from the staff on this one?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hooper. They lease the building from the village, and I believe, yeah, we own the land. And at the top of my head, the lease is, I believe, up at the end of this year. I'd have to check that.
So with a new building going on there that we no longer have control on, will we be requiring a market lease payment from them on a yearly basis?
This is not part of the recommendation today, but if you have any answers from staff, I think it's something that you'll have to get an answer at a later date.
That's not contemplated. No.
So we won't be charging them for the rental of the land.
We already do. I believe it's $1 a year.
Okay, so we've had a mover. I've seconded it. Now on the amendment from Councillor Palmer, you all understood it, everybody? And that's leaving out the last paragraph about the sale. Call the question now. All in favor? Favor? That's it. So that's a reminder from surplus. Okay, I will opposed. Count to 3 opposed, so motion fails on the amendment. And now back to the main motion. That's including the second paragraph as well. I'll call the question. Do we need a mover and a seconder for that? Mover and a seconder for this one. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Vidal.
You had a mover.
Sorry, we already had it. I thought so. I've got so many notes on this piece of paper here. I think I'll need another piece of paper. I thought we had. Don't confuse me, please. I call the question. All in favor of option 2 as read? Option 2, all in favor? Just Councillor Vidal in favor? And opposed? Motion fails. Yeah. So what is what's left, Deborah?
It might be helpful to, at this point, for council to give some direction to staff as to what additional options you may be looking for that we could bring back to the next regular council meeting.
Table quickly on this one, Councillor Hooper first.
Yes, look at reciting the building behind the existing council premises. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piper.
Hi, can you hear me?
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Sorry, I thought you said concurred on that. Sorry, Councillor Piper, back to you.
That's okay. Sorry, I don't have much to say other than I think it should be demolished. So whatever staff, I'm sorry, you're kind of in a lurch here, but the building, it needs to be gone. So our indecision today, or decisions, I guess, are really leaving our one of the key organizations in our community in the lurch. So I'm quite disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Well, I mean, I think I've made my thoughts clear in terms of my amendment. I guess I could have accepted the second one if it had simply said out, it still talked about the 45,000 coming from surplus, and I still wanted it to say as a minimum that it say 30,000 from tourism Harrison and the balance from surplus. I think I could have accepted the sale. That's not my choice, but I also recognize that that's not where the consensus of council is. Obviously, we've not been able to reach a consensus today on this issue. I guess I don't know what other information. I don't know that more information would be helpful. I'm not sure that's going to be able to be available within the next 8 days. From my point of view, is there some other municipal use? Could it be a senior center? What's the square footage of the place? But I mean, those are not issues. What a renovation cost? But again, I don't for a moment expect that staff's in a position to give accurate information on that within such a short period of time. So, I certainly see it needs to be moved or moved or demolished. I certainly see we have to act quickly. That's not a question. So I also didn't expect to have no conclusion today. I thought we might have a conclusion I wasn't happy with, but I've gotten used to that over the last 3 years. But I didn't expect to have no conclusion. But I certainly say we need one. We do need to deal with it. We don't want to mess up the new building. That I feel strongly about. Thank you.
But just as a quick clarification, I'll just go back to your comments. You just wanted to know if there was any use that could be had of the building and maybe what the costs. This is what staff are asking for. So I think they have your notes from your previous comments. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, one question. We bring this back to next regular council meeting, but would our CAO have any idea if we could receive confirmation from Tourism Harrison that they're willing to donate that 30,000 towards moving the building? And I understand our CAO may not be able to answer that, but just wondering what her thoughts are on it, Your Worship.
Yes, Your Worship.
Yep.
I can speak to that. I can reiterate what went out in an email from me yesterday, which is that I had a conversation with the executive director of Tourism Harrison River Valley, wherein he said he had no objection to repurposing the $30,000 slated for demolition to moving costs, provided that it didn't exceed that. He was clear that it would have to be capped at that because otherwise it would jeopardize the rest of the project.
All right, and I'm also a little disappointed that we haven't been able to resolve this issue today, but I do think it is an important issue and something that council needs to consider carefully. So I will look forward to perhaps some further discussion on it, Your Worship, at our next our next council meeting, or perhaps another special meeting if something further comes up. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Yes, as I said, if we ask Tourism Harrison to recite, say, the land behind the village office, we don't have to deal at this moment in time with the demolition or movement of that building. That can stay there and we can do it at a later date at our own leisure. So I do think that the reciting of their, which is a great building, to behind the village office on the green there, solves all the problems with parking and the rest of it. And it still leaves room that if we have a culture centre at the end of the day, it could tie in with that sort of building. So again, I think recycling it is probably the only option that we've got left, because we're never going to come to any agreements on demolishing, cost and the rest of it. So, thank you.
Thank you. No other comments?
Myself?
Okay, yes,
Uh,
McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think, I think we've got a sense of the various interests at the council table around this building. I think from a staff point of view, we can also bring back more information about the building condition that perhaps we haven't provided sufficient detail in that. And I will revisit the timelines around the project. I'll meet with Tourism Harrison River Valley, and we'll get more clarity on those timelines too. And hopefully additional information will help council in their future discussions.
Thank you. So is that it, Deb?
Correct. We have nothing further on the agenda except adjournment. Well, actually, we have question
Quick
period.
question. Anybody on Zoom this morning like to ask a question?
If anyone on Zoom has a question, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll call on you. Looks like there's no questions, Your Worship.
Any questions from the public this morning? Please come forward, ma'am. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry, it's Jean Howsam. I am a Harrison resident for a long time. I am interested, I've got about 3 questions indirectly. One is if the 2 properties where the village office
Right.
is now and the heritage building, which is the tourist building, I guess. If those 2 were amalgamated, would that be a potential place for building your office needs? I'm just asking this as a question because I know in, say, for instance, the City Hall in Chilliwack, they have the foyer where they have all their tourist brochures and things like that as part of their main office. And I've often wondered, I thought that was a big enough space as a future potential. It was like one question. The other one is that the building has potential for museum money and heritage money, actual money that can be brought into the picture possibly if it's saved, which it sounds like at this point it's safe physically. There is a lot of potential for looking at there's Arts Umbrella, there's all kinds of money purposes that building could be developed into with thoughts, but I'm just wondering about I was actually wondering about the use of the land in the first place.
This is the land, council brought forward plans and the idea of putting a civic center there with offices and an area for the public and an area for a cultural area as well within that building. The number one, the grant didn't come through. Number 2, there was a strong petition from the public that went through against that. So, and the land would have to be rezoned because two portions of the land is park dedication on the Miami River end. So at the moment, so council decided that till after the OCP is finished, there will be no suggestions on what they may like to see on that land, depending what comes from the public consultation.
I'm not referring to the rest of the parkland. But the 2 properties where there's buildings on them now. Because if you move the tourist building and you have your other old building that's your offices, that actually adds up to quite a good sized piece of land is all I'm wondering about. If they were ever able to be amalgamated for your office purposes and include the tourist center as a part of the floor plan.
No, the
That
original
can't be done.
the original
No.
suggestion for the existing village office was whatever could be used for, who knows, if we'd built the civic center.
Yeah, but
The-
that's
The
not what I'm
idea was to
talking-
keep the idea was to keep that parcel with that property where it sits now, not to move it or to take it down. Leave it there
Yeah.
for another society if they wish to take it over. Whether it be the arts or whatever, or festival, whatever, or museum, whatever. These are all just things that were thrown out for discussion. And then build a new building, but leave that building where it was.
Which is my point. We wouldn't, in my theory, you wouldn't do that. You would take that one down. You're moving the heritage building, which hasn't been applied for as one yet, but it certainly qualifies. And have that physical, the two lots could be used that way without touching the rest of, I'll call parkland.
Well, so like I said, at the moment, everything is in abeyance, nothing is, there's no discussion on that till after the OCP. And in regards to, I have made inquiries in the past regarding heritage buildings, and I was making reference many years ago to the ranger station, that the Heritage Society do not look at that as a heritage building, so there's no funding for that. And so it has to be designated and it has to be registered as before they would even look at any funding. I know there's lots
Oh,
of
no,
funding.
you have to
I know
do
there's
all
lots
that
of funding
first.
out there, Jane, regarding for heritage buildings, but that is not a heritage building. You know, so, but anyway, tourism have done their part to get the funding to put a new building there, which obviously would improve everything. It'd be a larger museum, which is a big plus for the village. And so that's the plans at the moment.
Okay, just checking in, thanks.
But it's coming back to council again, as you heard this morning. But thanks for coming this morning, taking an interest. Much appreciated. For the motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Palmer, second by Councillor Piper. All in favor? Thank you, everybody, for turning up this morning. Thank you on Zoom. Take care of yourselves. See you soon. Thank you, staff.
Thanks, staff. Bye-bye.